So, as Dave said, my company Gaggle works with schools and school districts across the country, and our job is to identify kids in crisis before a tragedy happens. To give you some context, this last school year, we identified over 60,000 incidents where kids talked about depression or cutting. And on top of that, another 5,000 where students talked about their suicide ideation, their thoughts and plans for suicide. Oftentimes we find suicide notes in real time and are able to prevent suicides from taking place. I'm also the father of 3 teenage daughters, so I'm blessed. I'm blessed to be here with you and not at home this week. It's kind of nice to be away. We've been having a great time during COVID in my family. We've been having dinner every night. I have learned, though, with 4 women, we have run out of things to talk about, but we haven't run out of things to argue about. Right? So I think those 2 perspectives are what gives me some insight to share with you. I'm going to talk about some of the mental health and wellness issues, but first I want to talk about what's going on with remote learning and Zoom classrooms. I read this article in the spring from a district that they were celebrating their engagement. They had 95% of their students were engaged in the learning in the spring. And as you read down in the article, they defined what engagement was. Engagement was the students logging in to the system twice a week for 30 minutes. That's all. 5% of the kids couldn't even do that. We have to accept that with 1 hour of instruction a week on virtual learning, they're not going to learn as much. It's not as effective as classroom learning. And so we need to reset our mindset to what is to be expected this year. I don't want you to blame the teachers and school administrators. They're doing the absolute best that they can, right? They're in an impossible situation. The way I describe it is there's a rock on the ground and they've been told, make that rock fly. Oh, by the way, you can't put wings on it and you can't touch it. You have to do the impossible, but you'll figure out some way to do that. That's the situation our school systems are in. Some are going to go back in person. I'm very happy for that, but I believe the vast majority of schools will not go back to in-person classes this entire school year. And I'm really saddened by that, and our students are saddened by that. This is one of the key points I want you to take away from this. If your students are going to be doing remote learning, really even if they're not, this is probably a gap year. There's just no other way to think about it. They're not going to learn as much. We're all type A, achievement-oriented leaders. It's hard for us to let go of that, but we have to accept it. We have to, as my mentor, I have a mentor who's told me years ago, he said, Jeff, sometimes you have to set your expectations lower if you want to be happy. And I think this is one of those times you need to set your expectations lower. So what do you do instead, right? What should you focus on? We need to focus on the mental health and well-being of our students. That's the biggest concern you should have, right? Our number one job in parents is to keep our kids safe, to help them become happy adults with meaningful lives. And this is an important time to focus on that and not lose sight of that is the most important thing. Let me give you some pre-COVID statistics that are frightening. This is pre-COVID. 6,000 students a year commit suicide. 6,000 youth. Those are from the ages of 24 all the way down to 7 years old. Yes, 7-year-olds commit suicide. There's an even more frightening statistic than that. Over 3,000 students a day are attempting suicide. Again, pre-COVID, attempting suicide. And why that's so incredibly frightening to me is we know that before someone successfully commits suicide, they attempt it once or twice. So again, even before COVID, we had really what I suspect was a tsunami of youth suicide headed our way. I've seen some statistics from some suicide and crisis hotlines where I've seen increases year over year for this year, up 65%, as much as 300% increase in calls to those suicide hotlines. So again, what do? We focus on our students' mental health and well-being, right? We need to give them something to look forward to in life, right? They have to have something exciting to do. Get involved in what they're doing. Ask them questions. Share with them the struggles that you're probably experiencing in this time as well. Play their favorite video game with them and lose, because you will. Watch TikTok with them, if TikTok's still around. Watch some YouTube channels, PewDiePie. We like Minute Physics at my house. If your kids are older, Check out Drunk History. It's really raunchy, but it's fun if you're into that. Find those things that you can engage with your kids. They've lost so much, right? No sports, no prom, no graduation, no birthday parties, no college experience. In some cases, no friends. I know families that are isolating their kids at home and not having interaction with other students. And this is such an important social time for kids. Find some trusted families that you can do meetings and play dates with. Find some ways to get together and find some ways to get active with your kids. Get them something to do that's fun. Maybe it's cooking, maybe it's some new skill, right? Whatever it is, you can get them to focus on that's going to be something they appreciate. My 18-year-old daughter, when I told her about this speech, she had some things she wanted me to share with all of you, things that adults say that upset kids, right? So these are things you shouldn't say. You're going to be living through a historic time. You're going to look back on this fondly, right? You're going to remember this because this is historic. She doesn't want to hear it, right? Look on the bright side. Don't say that. There is no bright side as far as they're concerned. You're the first class ever to have virtual graduation, right? These are things not to say, and she said, these things you say don't make up for what we've lost, right? It's just a difficult time for our youth. So again, there's two thoughts I really want you to take away from this short speech, right? One, think of this as a gap year. Embrace it, make it encouraging, make it as good as you can. It's a gap year when it comes to learning. And the second piece is focus on the mental health and well-being of your students. I do not want to hear about any tugboat leader's family having a tragedy during this time. And your staff as well. Your staff are oftentimes parents, and they're having these same struggles and pressures, right? The kids are worried, the families are worried, right? The kids are worried about their health, your grandparents' health, right? They're worried about the finances of your family, right? So if you can, share them with what's going on financial in your family so they don't have to worry about that. They're hearing about friends' families that are experiencing financial difficulty. So again, mental health, gap year, let's not have any tragedies. Thank you.